Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is information@CuandReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 19th of March 2026, from a news section. Exclusive. Human Rights Watchdog concerns over trans prison policy. An exclusive written by Andrew Learmonth. Scotland's Human Rights Watchdog has urged ministers to prioritise talks on rewriting the prison service's transgender policy, warning it fails to properly consider the rights of women. In a letter to Justice Secretary Angela Constance, the Scottish Human Rights Commission, SHRC, said the current Scottish Prison Service, SPS, policy does not adequately reflect the human rights of all those affected and, in particular, does not sufficiently engage with the rights of female prisoners at all. However, the national human rights body has rejected calls to seek a formal court ruling on the lawfulness of the approach. The intervention comes as the Court of Session continues to consider a judicial review brought by For Women Scotland, challenging the legality of the SPS policy for the management of transgender people in custody. It was published in late 2023, following public outcry over the Isla Bryson case, who first appeared in court facing rape charges under the name Adam Graham. Following conviction, the SPS initially diverted Bryson to Cornton Vale, Scotland's only women's prison, rather than the planned destination of HMP Barlinnie. The decision provoked widespread backlash and prompted a review of SPS practices. The resulting policy states that a transgender woman will not be eligible to be considered for admission or transfer to a women's prison if they have been convicted of serious offences, including murder, assault, robbery, abduction, rape and sexual harassment. However, it includes an exception. The SPS risk management team, and subsequently an executive panel, may approve such a transfer if there is compelling evidence that they do not present an unacceptable risk of harm to those in the women's prison. For Women Scotland has taken the Scottish Government to court in a bid to have the policy quashed, saying it is out of line with the 2024 Supreme Court ruling that a woman is defined by biological sex under equalities law. The Scottish Government argued that a blanket ban would violate the rights of some inmates. The case was heard before Lady Ross at the Court of Session in Edinburgh earlier this year. On the second day of the hearing, the SHRC said, in principle, it had no difficulty with an individualised approach, but that the current prisons policy did not directly refer to the human rights of female prisoners or staff. In written submissions to the court, the Commission has already accepted that placing a transgender prisoner of male biological sex in the female estate is likely, in many cases, to engage the Article 8 rights of female prisoners, their right to privacy and personal life. It is also accepted that, in some circumstances, it could engage Article 2, the right to life, Article 3, the right not to be subjected to inhumane or degrading treatment, and Article 14, the right not to be discriminated against. In February, the Policy Collective Murray Blackburn Mackenzie, MBM, wrote to the SHRC questioning why, despite acknowledging serious flaws in how women's rights are considered in the policy, the Commission has not sought a declarator, a formal court ruling on whether the policy is lawful. In a response sent earlier this week, the SHRC said it did not believe the threshold for a declarator had been reached. It also confirmed that its chair, Professor Angela O'Hagan, had written to Angela Constance and to the SPS to reflect on the concerns raised by the SHRC before the court, and to be clear that we stand ready to ensure that duty bearers are protecting the rights of all prisoners, including those of women prisoners and staff. In the letter to the Minister, Professor O'Hagan reiterated that the Commission has concerns that the current SPS policy does not adequately reflect its relevant convention rights engaged for the different groups of rights holders affected by the policy, and that, in particular, it does not sufficiently engage with the rights of female prisoners at all. She pointed out that the government's lawyers acknowledged that there would maybe be a conversation to be had on this matter. Professor O'Hagan said, "We recognise that it would be premature for said conversation to take place in advance of the judgment from Lady Ross on the lawfulness of the guidance. However, on behalf of the members of the SHRC, I would like to note that, regardless of the outcome, the SHRC would wish to engage with the Scottish Government and SPS on the future approach to the design, implementation and monitoring of policies which require a human rights-based assessment, particularly in contexts such as these where the rights of multiple and particularly at-risk groups are engaged. I would therefore appreciate it if you could ensure that your officials prioritise arranging a meeting with the SHRC to discuss this following the judgment in the case of FWS versus Scottish Ministers." MBM welcomed the SHRC response, but said it still had concerns. "We welcome confirmation that the SHRC has abandoned its previously indefensible position and has now written to the Scottish Government to raise its concerns about the existing SPS policy. We remain concerned, however, that the Commission is not addressing directly the human rights issues for women of incarceration with men in any circumstances." For Women Scotland said, "We welcome this move from the SHRC. For too long, women's rights have been the bottom of the pile when drawing up policy. At best, our rights have been neglected. Worse, however, they have often been violated. So, it is good to see a Scottish organisation state so clearly that women's rights are also human rights. We hope this trend continues." A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "It would be inappropriate to comment on live court proceedings. While it would be premature for a conversation to take place while the litigation is live, Ministers are open to future engagement with SHRC." That article was an exclusive written by Andrew Learmonth and read by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 19th of March 2026, Politics. John Swinney, Anna Sarwar's stroke joke was disrespectful. An article written by Rebecca McCurdy. John Swinney said voters will not trust Anna Sarwar after he made a flippant and disrespectful joke about looking as if he had suffered a stroke. The Scottish Labour leader enraged charities and stroke campaigners with the remark he made after a press conference in Edinburgh on Wednesday. Mr Sarwar's team issued an apology on his behalf following the criticism. However, he had not directly addressed it until after First Minister's questions. The First Minister took aim at Mr Sarwar's language in the Holyrood Chamber on Thursday. He said, "I think people in Scotland will be pretty sceptical about the things that Mr Sarwar says in here and the commitments he gives, because we saw the real side of Mr Sarwar in his flippant and disrespectful comments about those who suffer strokes in our society yesterday. Mr Sarwar should do the decent thing and apologise in his own words." Afterwards, Mr Sarwar briefly spoke to journalists. He said, "I unreservedly apologise for the comments that I made yesterday. I don't have anything to other than to say a full, unequivocal and unreserved apology." The controversy was caused after Mr Sarwar recalled a photo where it looked like I was having a stroke. Mr Sarwar asked photographers, "You guys happy? Did you get my stroke pose?" After someone asked for clarity, he states, "I'm winding a picture I saw online that looked like I had a stroke." A member of Mr Sarwar's staff reminds the Scottish Labour leader that live cameras are still filming. Mr Sarwar then states, "Oh, is it? You're not going to use that? Come on." Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland strongly condemned the comments, warning that stroke is not a punchline or a pose. The charity said the comment diminished the experiences of families and survivors. Mr. Sarwar hinted he was open to meeting with the organisation following the remarks. A spokeswoman for Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland said, "For every person in Scotland whose life has been turned upside down by stroke, today's comments from Anna Sarwar was deeply disappointing. Stroke is not a punchline or a pose. It is a life-threatening medical emergency that has lasting physical, emotional and social impact on individuals and the people who care about them." The charity said more than 11,000 people in Scotland have a stroke each year and said it remains one of the leading causes of disability in Scotland. Families across the country sit beside hospital beds, support long, difficult rehabilitation journeys, and watch loved ones adapt to the reality of recovery. To diminish that experience, especially from someone who has just called for major healthcare reform, which for stroke is badly needed, shows a worrying lack of understanding of what stroke truly means, the charity said. The words we use about health conditions shape how society understands and respects the people living with them. We strongly recommend that anyone in public office take the time to understand the seriousness of major health conditions before speaking about them. Our ask goes beyond an apology. We would welcome the opportunity to provide Mr. Sarwar and his team with an in-person briefing, access to our stroke information resources, and training to ensure comments like today's are never repeated. James Bundy, whose father died of a stroke in 2023 when his condition was not detected by routine tests, said, "My family's campaign, founded after my father's premature death, aims to promote awareness of the Be Fast stroke symptoms and deliver 24/7 thrombectomy services across Scotland. As Anna Sarwar knows, my father's stroke was not identified in time, in part because his symptoms did not fit the traditional FAST picture. Flippant comments like this risk reinforcing the various stereotypes we are working to overcome. I am grateful for the early and strong support he has shown our campaign. But given that, he must know this comment will be hurtful to people across Scotland. I hope he reflects, apologises and commits, if elected First Minister, to rolling out both Be Fast awareness and 24/7 thrombectomy nationwide. Common symptoms include a drooping face, arm weakness and difficulty speaking." That article was written by Rebecca McCurdy and recorded by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 19th of March 2026, from the Politics section. Marie McCallan explains why she opposed assisted dying bill, by political editor Andrew Learmonth. Marie McCallan has said fears about coercion and protections for vulnerable people led her to withdraw support for assisted dying. The Housing Secretary was one of 12 MSPs who backed the general principles of Liam MacArthur's Assisted Dying for Terminally Ill Adults Scotland bill last May, but voted against the change in law on Tuesday night. Her decision caught some supporters of the bill by surprise. Explaining her change of heart to the Herald, Ms McCallan said that while she wanted to support change and voted on each amendment, trying to achieve a bill I could support, in the end she simply could not. She said, "I did not come to the issue with a predetermined view. At times I wished I had. I believe strongly both in choice and the preservation of human life. So at all times I have approached the matter with open-mindedness and with the hopes and needs of others in my heart." The Minister said her decision was focused on the detail of the law and carefully reached. "I supported the bill at stage 1, but it was clear I had to be sure that one person's choice and dignity would not become another's hopelessness or coercion. I was always open-minded, thought very carefully and, while supporting the principle, when it came to the detail I was not convinced that the bill provided sufficient protections." Mr MacArthur's bill was defeated by 69 votes to 57 on Tuesday, despite having cleared stage 1 by 70 votes to 56 last year. The reversal followed an intense lobbying on both sides and a series of last-minute changes among MSPs who had initially supported the legislation in principle. Ms McCallan said she voted against for those living with disability who feared the effects of this bill, and for her constituents fighting for the social care they need without which they can't be said to have a real choice. The minister said she was also worried about the risk of domestic abuse, violence and coercion. She added that she had also been troubled by concerns in the medical workforce and by Holyrood's limited ability to protect conscientious objection rights. Ms McCallan said, "I understand the intense desire for choice in death, but have a duty to weigh this against the pressure that could be brought to bear for those living with vulnerability. The bill could not fully guard against that. We must also confront the fear many hold that assisted death for one risks devaluing the perception of the lives of others. Indeed, the very support they rely on to live. With my head and my heart, and with respect for all views, this is not something I could agree to." Another of those who switched was Tory MSP Miles Briggs, who said the views of the NHS and palliative care staff had been central to his decision. He said, "For me, in the end, I think the concerns of staff who work in our NHS and palliative care sector did inform my decision not to support this bill. I don't think any of us in Parliament can put to one side the concerns they expressed in recent weeks and the lack of clarity on some aspects of this legislation." Mr Briggs said the debate had reinforced the case for greater investment in end-of-life care, an issue he has campaigned on separately through his own Right to Palliative Care bill. He said the next Parliament would need to deliver a new funding model for palliative care services, and warned that Scotland faced a widening gap between what people needed at the end of life and what the system could currently provide. Sharon Dowie, another Tory MSP who had initially backed the bill in principle, said she had been sympathetic to assisted dying but had to vote on the bill which was in front of me. It wasn't an easy decision, and I wrestled with this for weeks and months after attending meetings, round tables, events, speaking to people on both sides of the argument. But ultimately, I felt there were too many concerns raised by stakeholders at the end of the bill. Some moved from a neutral position to being against the bill. Ms Dowie said she had particular concerns that the debate risked distracting from the need to improve palliative care, adding, "Every extra minute is precious." Meanwhile, Scottish Labour's Deputy Leader Dame Jackie Baillie has rejected claims that her MSPs were instructed to vote against the assisted dying bill, insisting the decision was a matter of personal conscience and that there was absolutely no whipping by the party. Only 3 Labour MSPs backed the bill, despite strong support for similar legislation from Labour MPs at Westminster. 3 Labour MSPs who voted for the legislation at stage 1 withdrew their support at the final vote. Dame Jackie said those shifts were driven by concerns about safeguards, particularly around protections for vulnerable people, and opposition from medical and palliative care professionals. Supporters of the bill insisted the defeat would not end the campaign. Liam MacArthur said afterwards he was obviously deeply disappointed, but argued the issue would return to Parliament, though he has ruled out taking the bill back in the next session himself. Speaking to the BBC's Around Orkney programme, he added, "I am fairly confident as a result of what we saw last night that the next attempt to get this over the line will be successful and probably fairly comfortably so. This issue is not going away. The number of people affected by these bad deaths, given the demographic trends, given the advances in medicine, those numbers are only going to increase. And meantime, the overwhelming majority of people across Scotland are supportive of a change." That piece was written by political editor Andrew Learmonth. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 19th of March 2026, from the news section. Outdoor photography brings medical school history to life? A report written by Rose Moncur. A new outdoor exhibition is shining a spotlight on 3 centuries of medical achievement in Edinburgh. Faces of Edinburgh Medical School opens on Friday, March 20 at the Mound Precinct, where it will run until April 26 as part of the Edinburgh Science Festival. It will then move to Portobello Promenade from April 29th to June 14. The large-scale outdoor photography exhibition celebrates people who have shaped the University of Edinburgh's Medical School over its 300-year history. Hassan El Zafar, Chief Executive of Edinburgh Science, said, Faces of Edinburgh Medical School is a fantastic celebration of the people who have shaped 3 centuries of medical discovery and innovation. We are delighted to bring their stories into the heart of the city. Stories of resilience, brilliance and determination to improve lives. This exhibition reminds us that progress in medicine happens not only in laboratories and lecture halls, but through generations of individuals who listened, cared, challenged convention and opened doors for others. The exhibition features 65 individuals selected from 300 recognised as part of a wider programme, marking 3 centuries of medical education at the university. Among those included is Dr. Mary Hepburn, a retired obstetrician and gynaecologist, who established the Glasgow Women's Reproductive Health Service in 1990. Dr. Hepburn said, "Many of the women under my care lived with addictions or had difficult lives. Having compassion for people in their own circumstances, but not condoning their choices, helped me to support them." Also featured is Hefzibah Adigoke, a 5th-year medical student, who co-founded the African Caribbean Medical Society. Ms. Adigoke said, "I co-founded the African Caribbean Medical Society so new black students could feel supported from the beginning." The exhibition also highlights Callum Cruikshank, founder of the charity You Can Be a Doctor, and Helena Lewica, who studied at the university's Polish School of Medicine during the Second World War. Ms. Lewica said, "I have lived through difficult, stormy times, and I will always appreciate how much Edinburgh and its medical school contributed to the small successes in my life." Founded in 1726, the University of Edinburgh's Medical School is one of the oldest in the world. Its alumni include Joseph Lister and Elsie Inglis. The exhibition forms part of a wider programme of events during the Edinburgh Science Festival, which runs from April the 4th to 19th and includes more than 100 events aimed at engaging people of all ages with science. This year's theme, Going Global, explores science as a shared human story, connecting people across countries and cultures. Speakers include Helen Sharman and Hamza Yassin, while special events will pay tribute to Jane Goodall and feature a panel chaired by Nicola Sturgeon. That report was written by Rose Moncur and read by E. McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 19th of March 2026. From the business section, exclusive. SNP says Scottish industry afterthought for Labour after job losses. An exclusive written by Ian McConnell, Group Business Editor. The SNP has claimed Scottish industry is an afterthought for the Labour Party after it emerged this week that £377 million has been spent on keeping open British Steel's Scunthorpe plant. While declaring it was absolutely right to protect the workers of Scunthorpe, the SNP contended Labour had failed to save hundreds of industrial jobs in Grangemouth or Mossmoran. More than 400 jobs were lost with the closure of Petrolineos of the Grangemouth oil refinery, which could trace its roots back more than 100 years and ceased processing crude in April last year. And hundreds of jobs have been lost with ExxonMobil's closure of its ethylene plant at Mossmoran and Fife, which shut down production on February the 2nd after more than 40 years of operations. The SNP declared, "A National Audit Office investigation into the UK government's intervention in British Steel's Scunthorpe site shows £377 million has been spent keeping the site open so far, with operational costs around £1.3 million a day, and the total cost of operating the site is expected to exceed £1.5 billion by 2028. It added, "The Labour government stepped in to save British Steel at Scunthorpe and facilitated new owners for Lindsay Oil Refinery in Lincolnshire, but failed to save hundreds of industrial jobs in Grangemouth or Mossmoran in Scotland." The SNP claimed that, with energy, trade and industry all reserved to Westminster, it is clear the Labour Party is to blame for deindustrialising Scotland while protecting the industry in England at all costs. SNP MSP for Kirkcaldy David Torrance said, "When it comes to stepping in to save industrial jobs, Scotland is simply an afterthought to the Labour Party, while they pull out all the stops to save jobs in England. It seems industry matters more to Keir Starmer when it's south of the border. It was absolutely right to protect the workers of Scunthorpe and Lincolnshire, but with energy and economic powers all reserved to Westminster, Scots are rightly asking why that same support does not extend to Scotland. Sir Keir Starmer's administration has continued the Energy Profits Levy, or windfall tax on North Sea players, which was introduced under the previous Conservative government at Westminster. Mr Torrens said, "Between the disastrous tax on Scotland's energy and failing to step in to support industry when it's needed, the Labour Party are deindustrialising Scotland at a rate not seen since Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s. Only with the fresh start of independence can we build an industrial policy that suits Scotland's needs. While the oil refinery at Grangemouth was closed with hundreds of job losses, the Labour government has highlighted its contribution to safeguarding other employment at this huge industrial complex. The UK government declared in December it was providing a £120 million plus support package as part of a £150 million joint investment with INEOS to protect vital chemical production and 500 jobs at Grangemouth, plus hundreds more in the supply chain." That article was an exclusive written by Ian McConnell and read by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 21st of March 2026, from the news section. Do not eat warnings to shoppers at Lidl, Tesco and more. By Joshua Serrell. Shoppers at Lidl, Tesco and other major UK supermarkets are being advised to check their cupboards following a number of recalls due to safety concerns. A number of food recalls have been issued for various reasons, with the Food Standards Agency, FSA, giving "do not eat" warnings to customers. Several recalls are currently active, affecting products sold nationwide at a range of UK supermarkets and retailers. Customers who have purchased any of the affected items are advised to take note of the possible health risks and follow the official guidance. Walker's crisp recall. A packet of crisps sold at UK supermarkets has been recalled by Walkers, and shoppers have been warned do not eat the affected item. Walkers is recalling its 6-pack of hot honey crisps, which can be purchased from Tesco, Ocado and more retailers, because they could contain a mild cheese and onion seasoning which contains milk and is not correctly labelled. The company said, "Although this product includes precautionary allergen labelling for milk, milk is not included in the ingredients list and therefore the product poses a risk to people with an allergy to milk." The affected batch is a 6-pack of 25-gram bags with a best before date of May the 16th, 2026 and the batch code GBB 584031. The Food Standards Agency, FSA, has warned the product may contain milk, which makes it a possible health risk for anyone with an allergy to milk or intolerance to milk or milk constituents. It added, "If you have bought the above product and have an allergy to milk, do not eat it. Instead, please call the Consumer Care Line on 0800 274 777 or visit contact.pepsico.com/walkers to receive a full refund." Walkers confirmed that no other batch codes on this best before code are affected. A PepsiCo spokesperson said, "We are recalling a specific batch of Walker's Hot Honey 6x 25-gram multi-packs from specific UK retailers and wholesalers. Some of the packets may contain mild cheese and onion seasoning rather than hot honey, meaning the product is incorrectly labelled and may pose a risk to people with an allergy to milk. This applies only to product with the impacted batch code. No other Walkers or PepsiCo products are in scope for this recall. The quality and safety of our products is of paramount importance to us, and we sincerely apologise for the error. We are working with the Food Standards Agency, impacted retailers and allergen groups to inform customers." Lidl recall. Lidl has apologised to shoppers after it was forced to recall a snack product. The supermarket is recalling Snacktastic multigrain bites, sour cream and black pepper because it may contain pieces of foil. The affected bags have a best before date of April the 4th and a batch code of 207345. A spokesman for the Food Standards Agency, FSA, warned, Lidl GB is recalling the above product. Point of sale notices will be displayed in all retail stores that are selling this product. These notices explain to customers why the product is being recalled and tell them what to do if they have bought the product. If you have bought any of the above product, do not eat it. Instead, return it to a Lidl GB store for a full refund. For further information, contact Lidl GB's customer care team on 0203 966 5566 or at customer.care@lidl.co.uk. Lidl spokesman added, no other Snacktastic products in Lidl GB stores are affected by this recall. If you have bought the above product, we advise you not to eat it. We apologise for any inconvenience caused and thank you for your cooperation. Aptamil recall. Parents have been warned not to use a batch of baby formula because it may contain a toxin that could make their child ill. Danone has recalled its Aptamil first infant formula because of the possible presence of cerulide toxin. The toxin can cause nausea, vomiting and abdominal cramps and is unsafe to consume. It is produced by some strains of Bacillus cereus and is highly heat stable, meaning it is unlikely to be destroyed by cooking or when making the infant milk. The impacted batch of formula has a best before date of October 31st, 2026. A Danone spokesman said, it was sold in May to July 2025. The expiry date, batch and time can be found in the lower back of the pack. No other batches are affected by this notice. Customers that still have products from this batch can return it to the shop where they bought it for a full refund with or without a receipt. A spokesman for the Food Standards Agency, FSA, added, Danone is recalling the above product. Point of sale notices will be displayed in all retail stores that are selling this product. These notices explain to customers why the product is being recalled and tell them what to do if they have bought the product. If you have bought any of the above product, do not feed it to babies. Instead, return it to the shop where they bought it for a full refund with or without a receipt. For further information, contact the Aptamil Careline team on 0800 996 1000 or at www.aptaclub.co.uk. Even if you have not identified ill health in your baby as a result of consumption of this product, it is essential to stop using it. If the infant formula was prescribed by a health professional for your infant, consult a pharmacist or other medical professional before changing formula. If you have fed this product to a baby and have any concerns about potential health impact, you should seek advice from healthcare professionals using the most appropriate route depending on where you live, i.e., visit your GP, call NHS 111. TK Maxx recall. Drinks products sold at TK Maxx and HomeSense have been recalled as they pose a potential health risk to some shoppers. TJX Europe is recalling its 10-acre gifts / coffee syrup collection because of the safety concerns. The items were sold in TK Maxx and HomeSense between October 2025 and January 2026 and have a best before date of September the 9th, 2026. The collection may contain nuts, peanuts, soya and wheat gluten, which are not mentioned on the label. A spokesman for the Food Standards Agency, FSA, said, this product may contain nuts, peanuts, soya and wheat gluten, making it a possible health risk for anyone with an allergy to nuts, peanuts, soya and or an allergy to or intolerance to wheat or gluten with celiac disease. TGX Europe is recalling the above product from customers and has been advised to contact the relevant allergy support organisations, which will tell their members about the recall. These notices explain to customers why the product is being recalled and tell them what to do if they have bought the product. If you have bought the above product and have an allergy and or intolerance to any of the allergens listed above, do not eat it. Instead, return it to the store from where it was bought for a full refund. Please contact customer service at tgxeurope.com or 01923 473 561 for further information. What is a product recall? If there is a problem with a food product that means it should not be sold, then it might be withdrawn, taken off the shelves, or recalled when customers are asked to return the product. The FSA issues product withdrawal information notices and product recall information notices to let consumers and local authorities know about problems associated with food. In some cases, a food alert for action is issued. This provides local authorities with details of specific actions to be taken on behalf of consumers. That article was written by Joshua Serrell and read by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 21st of March 2026, from the news section. Brewdog bar staff asked to reapply for their old jobs. Article written by Audran Gallagher. Staff at Brewdog's Merchant City bar who were axed in mass layoffs have been asked to reapply for their jobs. Sacked workers at the brand's former flagship Glasgow pub received emails giving them the opportunity to apply for their old jobs. The self-styled punk Scottish beer giant, which once attained a unicorn valuation of £2 billion, was sold off for parts at the beginning of the month. The brand was acquired for £33 million by a US cannabis firm in a takeover deal that closed 38 pubs across the country and cut 484 jobs. One email to the bar's ex-manager read, "We appreciate that you may have strong feelings about what has happened, and we fully respect that you may not wish to engage further." But it continued, "Given your previous connection to the bar, we wanted to ensure you were aware of the opportunity to apply for a role should you wish to be considered." The former bartender said, "My exact reaction was, why on earth would I want to work for you again after you made me redundant?" They added that several former colleagues were up in arms about the company's fire and rehire tactics. They replied to the email saying, "Why on earth would anyone want to work for you again? People are struggling financially because of the company's failings and inability to actually pay people what they are owed. Thanks but no thanks." They also questioned the new owner's strategy in buying up assets, saying, "Where is this money coming from? It seems like they've had the money and just didn't know they were buying or what they were selling." After the takeover by Tilray, the firm struck a deal to buy Brewdog's Australian businesses as well as some of its US assets. "It's quite horrible to see you're buying back assets, yet you couldn't save nearly 500 people's jobs in the UK where your biggest market is." They added, "It's quite difficult to read and talk about." Staff let go by the new owners in the recent takeover deal were offered 1 week's pay for every year of employment, but some say they have struggled to claim the money. One bartender from the Duke of Hammersmith pub in London said that staff are given just 25 minutes notice before being invited onto a Zoom call bloodbath, which left just 11 locations standing. As CEO James Taylor hosted the call, redundant workers reportedly denounced company higher-ups as P********************************** S and C************ S while threatening legal action. The staff member added that everyone was absolutely distraught at the pub. This article was written by Audran Gallagher and recorded by Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Saturday the 21st of March 2026, from the news section. Glasgow MP questions legality of Trongate 103 rent hike. Article written by Andrew Learmonth. Arts organisations at one of Glasgow's best-known cultural venues have issued an urgent appeal to ministers, warning the future of the Trongate 103 complex is in immediate jeopardy. In a letter to the Scottish Government, the 7 charities based in the Merchant City building say they face being forced out within days unless there is an intervention. Meanwhile, Labour MP John Grady has raised concerns directly with the landlord, City Property, Glasgow LLP, and Glasgow City Council over the legality of charging commercial rents in a publicly funded arts centre, warning it would be unusual given the building's origins as long-term cultural infrastructure. Trongate 103, which opened in 2009, was developed with public funding from Glasgow City Council alongside grants from the Scottish Arts Council, Scottish Enterprise and Merchant City Heritage Trust. Earlier this month, the Herald revealed that notices to quit by March 27th had been issued to organisations based in the building. While GMAC Film spoke out, the other tenants, Sharmanka Kinetic Theatre, Glasgow Print Studio, Street Level Photo Works, Project Ability, Project Rooms and Transmission Gallery, declined to comment while attempting to negotiate terms with the landlord. They have now broken their silence. The letter, sent earlier this week to Cultural Secretary Angus Robertson and seen by the Herald, was copied to all local councillors, MPs and MSPs. It warns, without intervention, many of the organisations based in the building face immediate displacement and Glasgow risks losing one of its most significant cultural centres. The organisations stress they contribute significantly to Glasgow's cultural life, tourist industry and international reputation as a city of culture. However, they argue that the building is now caught in what they describe as a structural contradiction. The tenants say that, after the council moved its property into city property in the late 2000s, Trongate 103 started being treated like a money-making asset, even though it was set up as a publicly funded art space. A study in 2023, commissioned by the Council and Creative Scotland, and carried out by consultant CEIS, looked at how it could run sustainably. It suggested running costs could be covered through service charges, with low rents of about £2 per square foot. But the group say the landlord's new plan is very different. Under it, tenants would still pay all the running costs and also rent of £4 per square foot. They also say that things have worsened because the estimated running costs have risen sharply. The earlier study put annual costs at about £195,000. New figures from City Property now put that at around £300,000 plus VAT, along with about £58,000 for insurance. Altogether, the 7 organisations would have to pay about £385,000 a year in service charges and £315,000 a year in rent, roughly £700,000 in total. The tenants say that it is nearly 4 times higher than before, with service charges rising to close to tenfold. They say they would need to find an extra £560,000 a year just to keep going. This financial expectation is not aligned with the economic reality of the organisations operating in the building, the tenants warn. They also criticise the timeline. On February 25th, tenants received notices to quit with a termination date of March 27th, 2026, which, the tenants group said, forced organisations to sign up to unviable new terms with full exposure to uncapped service charges and repairs in order to continue operating. The group told the minister that, as a result, 2 organisations are already facing the prospect of leaving the building, and 2 further organisations are now preparing emergency exit strategies. They write, on 16th March 2026, Glasgow City Council confirmed that the proposed terms are non-negotiable and that City Property is a commercial landlord operating independently of council intervention. This confirms the shift of the building's cultural infrastructure to a revenue-generating asset. The future of Trongate 103 as an established cultural hub is in immediate jeopardy. The organisations based in the building say they remain committed to constructive dialogue and to securing a viable long-term future for the centre, but the current trajectory risks dismantling one of Glasgow's most important cultural assets. Trongate 103 represents decades of cultural activity, public investment and artistic production. Its loss will significantly weaken Scotland's cultural infrastructure, they add. Meanwhile, in his letter to Glasgow City Council and City Property, Mr Grady said Trongate 103 was never intended to be a pure commercial market venture and instead was established to provide a permanent home for artistic organisations. The Labour MP, who was previously a partner at law firm Shepherd and Wedderburn, pointed to the building's original £8.5 million public funding package and said, such grant funding comes with conditions, for example, as to using the rents to be charged by the landlords. It would be unusual against this background to seek to charge a rent that does not account for this background, not least given rules around state aid and subsidy control. Mark Langdon of GMAC Film said the situation had reached a critical point. The clock is ticking and at GMAC we've pretty much hit the end of the road. We need to find alternative accommodation as the pressure from City Property is causing us significant financial damage, he said. Glasgow City Council referred the Herald to City Property, which then pointed to a statement sent out earlier this month. It said, "It is City Property's intention to support organisations to remain in the building wherever possible, and to ensure that Trongate 103 continues to provide high quality, affordable space for creative, cultural and community organisations." That article was written by Andrew Learmonth and read by Ian McKenna.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 23rd of March 2026, from the Opinions section. Edinburgh World Heritage must rethink position on capsule hostel. Article written by Jocelyn Cunliffe. A 544-bed capsule hostel in 4 A-listed Georgian townhouses raises serious questions for a World Heritage City and for those tasked with preserving that status, writes Jocelyn Cunliffe. Edinburgh's UNESCO World Heritage Newtown is internationally admired for a reason. It is not simply a collection of historic buildings, but a carefully composed urban landscape where architecture, streetscape and residential life were designed to work together. The crescents and terraces of the late Georgian period were conceived as part of a wider civic vision that has shaped Edinburgh's identity for more than 2 centuries. Athol Crescent, designed by Thomas Bonner in the 1820s, forms part of that story, which is why proposals to convert 4 Category A-listed townhouses, plus associated lane buildings, at 14 to 17 Athol Crescent into a 544-bed capsule-style hostel have caused such concern. The scheme is currently awaiting a final decision from a Scottish Government reporter after a developer chose to appeal prior to local decision-makers reaching a decision. Historic buildings inevitably change over time. The new town itself has seen many adaptations. Houses have become offices, offices have become apartments, and in some cases hotels. Sensitive reuse can help ensure the buildings remain viable and well maintained. But not every form of reuse is appropriate. The Athol Crescent scheme represents a level of intensification that raises serious questions about whether the character of these buildings and of the wider crescent can realistically be preserved. The issue is not simply the physical alterations that may or may not take place, it is the scale and intensity of the proposed use. Georgian townhouses were designed as elegant domestic spaces with carefully balanced rooms, generous staircases, and a clear hierarchy of interiors. These qualities depend on proportion and spatial clarity. Cramming in hundreds of sleeping pods into those spaces inevitably alters that character, regardless of whether the pods themselves are technically removable. In its formal response, Edinburgh World Heritage has suggested that concerns about that density of occupation are a management issue, rather than something that should influence planning decisions. It is difficult to accept that distinction. How a building is used matters just as much as how it is altered. Introducing hundreds of sleeping pods into Georgian principal rooms inevitably changes the character, experience, and long-term conservation of those spaces. This is particularly relevant within a World Heritage Site. Edinburgh's designation recognises the international significance of the old and new towns as one of the most remarkable historic urban landscapes in the world. That status enhances the city's global reputation and places a responsibility on decision-makers to ensure that change strengthens rather than erodes its heritage. That is why so many voices have raised concerns about this proposal. Notably, all 4 city centre ward councillors, representing different political parties, have united in their opposition to the scheme. In a political climate where consensus is often elusive, such agreement is striking. Their shared concern only reinforces how perplexing it is that Edinburgh World Heritage appears comfortable supporting the proposal. As an organisation established to help safeguard the city's historic environment, its views understandably carry significant weight. For that reason, its position deserves careful reflection. No one doubts the pressures facing a city like Edinburgh. Tourism, economic development, and the need to keep historic buildings in use are all important considerations. But these pressures cannot be allowed to erode the very qualities that make the city special. If developments of this scale and intensity are considered acceptable within some of the most important Georgian buildings in the new town, what precedent does that set for other streets and crescents? Edinburgh's World Heritage status was not awarded simply because of its architecture, but because of the remarkable coherence of the city as a whole. Protecting that coherence requires vigilance and sometimes the willingness to pause and reconsider. I hope that Edinburgh World Heritage will reflect on its outlier position on Athol Crescent and engage constructively with organisations such as the Architectural Heritage Society of Scotland and others who share a commitment to protecting the city's historic fabric. Open discussion would be a positive step in ensuring that decisions affecting Edinburgh's heritage are made with the fullest possible understanding of their long-term implications. Change is inevitable in a living city, but it must also be appropriate. Jocelyn Cunliffe, RIBA, FRIAS, FRSA, is an architect and chair of the Architectural Heritage Society of Scotland, AHSS, a charity dedicated to protecting and promoting Scotland's historic buildings and places. The article was read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald, Scotland, Monday the 23rd of March, 2026, from the Opinion section. Flexible working fury exposes politicians stuck in the past. Article written by Ros Foyer, STUC General Secretary. While politicians rail against quangos and flexible working, the reality is a civil service stretched to its limits and holding essential public services together, warns Ros Foyer. As sure as night follows day, an election campaign and tightening fiscal conditions will presage intensifying attacks on public sector workers. The past few weeks it has been the turn of civil servants. Brilliantly funny though it may be, Yes Minister has a lot to answer for. Maybe politicians believe that the public believes that your archetypal civil servant looks and sounds like the series' central character James George Hacker, Baron Hacker of Islington, KG, PC, BSc, LSE, on D. Phil. The truth is, of course, different. Not that we need to apologise for the section of the civil service which supports government. Without these people, our democracy would grind immediately to a halt. However, imagining that this is an adequate description of the work that all civil servants do is like saying the NHS is only made up of doctors, or that the only people who make our universities tick are lecturers. Last week, within the basket of nastiness and economic illiteracy that is the Reform UK Manifesto for Scotland, Lord Malcolm Ian Offord, Baron Offord of Garvel, was the latest out of the traps to announce a bonfire of the quangos. The detail of which departments and which services would be sized under his master plan are still to be detailed. Perhaps he means Food Standard Scotland, Marine Scotland, or Agriculture and Rural Economy, who keep the food supply chain safe and functioning, carrying out inspections on farms, cattle markets, meat processing plants, on boats and at ports across Scotland, protecting animal, plant and public health. Or maybe, and perhaps this is more likely, he means the staff at Social Security Scotland, who have designed, rolled out and, most importantly, paid lifeline benefits to the most vulnerable in our communities. I guess if child poverty or supporting people with disabilities is not your priority, why would you value the staff that deliver that? We do, though. There is simply not the space to detail all of the work in health, justice, environmental protection, national security, and so many other areas that civil servants deliver. Despite being cut to the bone and clearly being selected by those on the right wing as the inglorious scapegoats for the economic failures of governments, our civil servants have performed admirably. Tireless work through the pandemic, coupled with increasing, not decreasing workloads, in addition to ever-changing ministerial priorities, makes for a challenging environment. That's without even mentioning the headcount reductions, recruitment freezes and spending controls inflicted on governmental departments. In fact, much of the problems facing the civil service can be traced back to privatisation, public service outsourcing, underfunding and deregulation. That has left us with societal challenges which have never been so big, and public sector capacity which has never been so stretched to meet it. Workload up, demand up, support and resilience down, whilst recruitment comes to a standstill. Tell me any other workplace, public or private, that would thrive in such conditions. The next time someone wishes to point at the absence figures of Scottish Government departments being higher than average, it wouldn't go amiss to provide some context why that might be the case. Comparing apples with oranges when it comes to sickness absence is another political hobby horse for the right, not to mention their fellow travellers in the commentariat. The apples are not just public sector organisations, but also large private sector employers. The oranges are smaller private organisations who consistently report lower sickness levels. Why could this be? What could major financial institutions have in common with the public sector? Might it just be that they run more effective HR recording systems and are more prone to have negotiated policies allowing longer periods of sickness absence rather than the sack in order to support people to return to work? Maybe they value the experience and expertise of the very many people who, inevitably at some point in life, will experience serious illness. Sacking folk, putting them on the benefits, to be administered of course by civil servants, and in turn contributing further to the economic inactivity statistics, is a strange way to promote economic growth. If you are going to jump on the bandwagon, I guess you might as well go at it with both feet. Not content with undervaluing their work and seeking to undermine humane and effective workplace absence policies, the same politicians and commentators are having a pop at civil service home working. The ire of the commentariat, in most cases probably launched from their living room laptops or home offices, now turns to those in the public sector who have the temerity to avail themselves of flexible working arrangements. Never mind that studies undertaken by institutions like Stanford University and King's College London indicate productivity increases of 5 to 10% from flexible working. Let's not mention the fact that the financial service sector reports similar gains. Let's ignore the IMF, the infamous and notorious global defender of trade union rights and labour laws, who say recent studies of work discrimination and reallocation highlight how expanding labour markets to a wider pool of potential employees can have massive productivity benefits. These are civil servants. The world of work should work differently for them. Opening up the labour market to those most excluded from it, those with caring and childcare responsibilities, mostly women, workers with a disability, and workers with additional workplace requirements, boosts the public coffers and widens our tax base. In other words, we grow the economy, not stifle it, and unions such as PCS, Prospect and the FDA, pushing to do that very thing, should be congratulated and not criticised. Those politicians and sections of the commentariat criticising flexible working are relics of a bygone age. It is almost as if they are more interested in having a pop at unionised public sector workers than improving the economy. They're amongst the most dedicated workers in our public sector and should be supported, not shunned. Ros Foyer is General Secretary of the STUC. The article was read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 23rd of March 2026, from the Opinions section. Glasgow must not lose its small firms to Union Street fire. Article written by Colin Borland. The Union Street fire has been devastating, not just for those businesses who lost everything in the flames, but for many more in the surrounding area. Its timing, just as the city centre seemed to be showing signs of shaking off its post-COVID struggles, seems particularly cruel. But if we're in the market for crumbs of comfort, and I would very much suggest that we are, the debate we're now having about both the root causes of the disaster and the future of the city centre might prove to be a catalyst for real change. How do we minimise the risk of something like this happening again? How do we boost the resilience of local firms to withstand shocks and business disruption outside their control? Do we need a better plan for keeping the city running when a crucial piece of transport infrastructure is suddenly put out of action? Alongside the immediate priorities of supporting those businesses whose premises were destroyed by the fire and getting Central Station fully back up and running, we also need to think about all the small businesses that do so much to bring life to the streets around Scotland's busiest railway station and make the city centre such a great place to visit. The outpouring of love for so many of these small businesses, the hairdressers, beauticians, takeaways, has been genuinely uplifting. I can think of no better word than love for the deluge of good wishes and financial donations that have poured in to help get them back on their feet. It has been sobering for me and my Federation of Small Businesses, FSB colleagues, to speak to so many of them in recent days, to check in on what they might need and offer practical support and advice where required. Many are understandably devastated, but resilient, as small business owners need to be, and determined to bounce back. Some lost everything. Some didn't have the right type of insurance to replace what has been lost. Some are still open but finding that the ongoing operations around the site and the public transport disruption are keeping customers away. The business rates relief that is being extended to those most directly affected is a most welcome first step, but the task ahead is massive. It's everything from talking to customers and negotiating insurance claims to finding and preparing new premises, and all with no revenue coming in. Beyond the immediate support, there is talk of a master plan for the regeneration of the area surrounding the fire site, and this needs to have the small businesses which brought the area to life at its heart. You might not appreciate just how many small firms operate in our city centre in units above ground level, more than 20 in the former Forsyth building alone. It is those businesses, providing all sorts of goods and services to their customers, who generate vital footfall in the city centre. We can't afford to lose them. Bluntly, Union Street, part of which has of course been covered in scaffolding for years, would have been pretty lifeless without them. Any regeneration master plan shouldn't just aim to restore that level of entrepreneurial activity, it should be increasing and celebrating it. That means involving small businesses to ensure that whatever comes next for Union Streets meets their needs. The potential for that site alongside Central Station, which in normal time attracts 70,000 passengers a day, is enormous. The way the city has been awash with memories of the area, remember arranging to meet under the Iron Brew advert or eating in the Wimpy, tells a story. It is testimony not only to how many people pass through the city centre, but the great affection for it. Memories, however fond, are not enough. If the city's future is to be as bright as that remarkable digital advertising screen, which valiantly kept going right until it literally fell off the wall it was bolted to, we'll also need investment and thoughtful planning. And we'll need to listen to the businesses who make the modern city centre work by attracting employees, customers, diners and more to streets that would otherwise lie empty. Right now, we need to support those hit by this tragedy through their moment of crisis. After that, we need to get on with delivering the city centre we deserve. People make Glasgow right enough, but small business people make it a place like no other. Colin Borland is Scotland Director for the Federation of Small Businesses, FSB. The article was read to you by Elizabeth.
From Herald, Scotland, 17th of March 2026, from the STEM section of the business section. Edinburgh councillor claims city has no regional accent. Article by Joe Sullivan. A councillor has claimed Edinburgh does not have its own regional accent. City of Edinburgh Council Finance Convener Mandy Watt made the comment during a committee meeting on a proposed new AI policy, prompting jeers from councillors. Ms Watt said, "Edinburgh maybe doesn't have a regional accent per se because it's such an international city, so it's going to be learning from a lot of different things. How does it learn from all the different languages?" Her remark drew criticism from SNP councillor Danny Aston, who said, "The idea that Edinburgh doesn't have an accent will come as news to the majority of folk across our city who speak with it every day. But maybe it's no surprise coming from Labour, who don't seem to care about Edinburgh, with Anas Sanwar saying he wants to be a Glasgow First Minister for Glasgow." The discussion came as Ms Watt asked how AI systems being piloted by the council would understand different accents and languages, reflecting the city's international population. A council officer said modern AI systems could adapt to a range of accents. Another added that during trials of the Magic Notes social work AI tool last year, the software was able to adapt easily to different accents. Councillors did not approve the policy at the meeting, instead referring it to next week's full council meeting, amid concerns that not all parties had been able to comment due to new rules on deputations. Mr Aston added that locals should be proud of Edinburgh and its place as Scotland's capital city. And that article was written by Joe Sullivan. From Herald, Scotland, 17th of March 2026, from the STEM section of the business section. Entire Scottish media should back the Greens targeting Elon Musk's X. Article by Neil Mackay. The Greens want to make social media platforms subject to laws of defamation and libel, just like publishers, newspapers and broadcasters. About time, says our writer-at-large. My concerns around digital technology's disastrous effects on the media have been known for a long time. Around 20 years ago, a very rich British entrepreneur and I got together to see if we could harness my hatred of big tech and his lust for money into a strange alliance which might help the publishing industry. I was subjected to a lot of love bombing, helicopter rides to palatial homes for opulent dinners and such, while we tried to find a solution to what at first sounds a rather simple problem. We wanted to develop a business model which allowed you, the media consumer, to make micropayments for each and every story you read online. You'd pay, say, 0.001 pence when you click on any story in any publication. Easier said than done though. How to aggregate every media company in the English-speaking world under one business model? That was the primary problem. Anyway, the man with the money seemed to prefer talking about this particular issue rather than doing, so we parted ways amicably. I resurrect this memory only to make the point that I've considered digital technology an existential threat to reliable, traditional media since the internet arrived. Indeed, it's a triple threat. I recall the late 1990s and the rush by traditional media to put content, a word I hate, online for free. Anyone with a brain could see this was suicide. Do bartenders give free pints? Do taxi drivers give free rides? Why should journalists work for nothing? That was threat 1, the media's own stupidity. Threat 2 came when traditional media realised that giving away stuff for free was indeed totally idiotic and tried to work out a sustainable alternative. By then, though, social media was stripping stories from traditional media and posting them online for free, so the public had been completely acculturated into paying nothing. None of this was helped in Britain by the BBC running its content free online. The public thought, if the national broadcaster gives everything away, then why doesn't my local newspaper, favourite magazine, national newspaper of choice? It's around this time that I budded up with my multi-millionaire pal. He saw a gap in the market. I saw an attempt to help the industry I love. Threat 3 developed over time with the growth of social media disinformation. I've never claimed that traditional media is perfect. Mistakes are made. There are scoundrels in the profession, as the news of the world's demise proved, and many print outlets are biased. However, there's a limit to bad behaviour by the print and broadcast media. We're subject to defamation and libel laws for a start. If I call someone a paedophile and they aren't a paedophile, then the paper I work for will be sued and I'll probably never work again. We're subject to regulation, much tighter for broadcasters than newspapers due to their reach and power. For social media, there is no regulation. Social media platforms aren't considered publishers, even though they are, so have no responsibility if someone posts a claim that Mr. X is a paedophile, Miss Y is a fraudster, or Mrs. Z is a terrorist. However, social media is now the top dog, and the traditional media, from newspapers to broadcasters, are the underdog in terms of reach, power and audience. It pains me terribly, but social media has more impact on public debate in Britain than the press or TV news. So gathered all together, that means that the most powerful voice when it comes to shaping public opinion is entirely unregulated. Social media is also riddled with disinformation and death threats. I cannot for the life of me understand why any media professional in Britain finds this state of affairs acceptable. Over the centuries, the press was subjected to increasing control, first with defamation laws, then later through regulatory bodies, in order to make sure that the public was fairly treated and that the truth got a fair crack of the whip. Publishers carried the can for any wrongdoing, and rightly so. Nobody deserves to be called a paedophile, fraudster or terrorist if they're a law-abiding citizen. As such, there's absolutely no reason why social media outlets shouldn't be treated the same and deemed publishers in law with the responsibility for the content their platforms carry. That would make them subject to defamation and libel laws, just like the BBC and this paper you're reading. Given how obvious this seems, at least to me, I'm stunned that only now are we seeing politicians step forward to promote these ideas. At the weekend, in an interview I conducted with the Scottish Green Party co-leaders Gillian Mackay and Ross Greer, proposed such a policy. I heartily support them, and I think every journalist in Scotland and the rest of Britain, including the National Union of Journalists, should do the same. You don't need to back the Greens to see the sense in this if you work in journalism or care about journalism. You can hate the Greens and still believe that on this they're right. We either act to rein in companies like X and Facebook, or we continue a spiral of impunity, disinformation and societal damage. Nor is this simply a pie-in-the-sky proposal from an opposition party. The Greens have been in government before and made legislative demands, so there could be more to this than an attempt to start a very necessary national conversation. What I would say, though, as a caveat to my praise, is that the Greens should lead by example. I asked Greer and Mackay if they were still on X. Yes, they both said. At the moment, I find this bewildering. If you believe X is so dangerous that it requires legislation to control it, then why remain there? Politicians still think they need to be on X to communicate. They fail to understand that X is no longer for communication. Nobody with a brain goes to X seeking facts. X is for spreading disinformation. So if you wish to tackle disinformation and improve the media, you do not help your cause by continuing to prop up the Elon Musks of this world. And that article was written by Neil Mackay, the Herald's writer-at-large. He's a multi-award-winning investigative journalist, author of both fiction and non-fiction, and a filmmaker and broadcaster. He specialises in intelligence, security, extremism, crime, social affairs, cultural commentary, and foreign and domestic politics.
From the Herald, Tuesday, 24th of March 2026, Sports section. Scotland warned they'll face four-man Brazil strike force at World Cup. By Mark Walker. Carlo Ancelotti has promised to unleash a four-man strike force in Scotland at the World Cup after being inspired by the Rio Carnival. Scotland play Brazil in Miami in the final match of the World Cup group stages, and it'll be the fifth time the nations have met in a tournament, with the Scots yet to taste victory. Legendary Italian boss Ancelotti has assured their fanatical supporters that he has the squad to bring the trophy back to the South American country for the sixth time. And he's revealed that attending the World Cup famous Rio Carnival last month gave him inspiration on how he wants his side to play in America. Ancelotti said, "Given the structure of the players we have, who are very good up front, we have to play with four forwards. I compare Brazilian football to Carnival. The Carnival was new to me. I understood a lot of the energy, a lot of the joy, a lot of the art, and a lot of the talent. They too needed a lot of organisation to coordinate all the floats in time. So we have to put all of that into the national team. The DNA of Brazil is very important, which is obviously talent, energy, and joy. And he admitted he's pinning all his hopes on Real Madrid superstar Vinicius Jr. He said, "We've other players, of course, but I think Vinny will have a great World Cup. He can be a game changer. Of course, we also have very good players up front, like Rafinha and Gustavo. It's not just one player who can make a difference. We have a very strong team. The squad's saving grace is that it has very high quality players. There's so many talented individuals." That article was by Mark Walker. From the Herald, Tuesday, 24th of March 2026, Sports section. Denmark boss bans Scotland defeat chat ahead of World Cup playoff. By Mark Walker. Denmark boss Brian Reimer has banned any mentions of their Hampden nightmare ahead of this week's World Cup playoff. The Danes faced North Macedonia in Copenhagen in the semi-finals of the UEFA playoff, with a game either against Ireland or Czech Republic if they get through that. They spectacularly choked in November when they only needed to defeat group whipping boys Belarus at home, at the same time as Scotland were losing in Greece to clinch qualification, yet could only draw. Then it got even worse for them when they conceded 2 injury-time goals to lose 4-2 in the final day showdown at Hampden and spark off scenes of celebration in Glasgow as Scotland qualified for their first World Cup in 28 years. And the head of the playoff, Reimer, admitted he's no plans to recall that famous night in November. He said, "For me, so much time has passed after that game, and I don't want to go back and start digging around it." Look, perhaps there might be a video clip of a moment where a player did something in that game in Glasgow that I want him to do differently this week, so there might be small elements I have to address. But in the bigger picture, I won't talk about what happened, because we have to make sure we're 100% ready, and we should spend time on ourselves and what lies ahead of us, and not on what happened in Scotland. The situation is even more critical than it was in November, but I don't feel burdened by the pressure. But I know my summer will be terrible if I don't make it to the World Cup, and it will be absolutely fantastic if I make it. That's all that matters to me. That article was by Mark Walker. From the Herald, Tuesday, 24th March 2026, Sports section. Food for thought as Fitzpatrick shines with Masters looming. By Nick Roger, golf correspondent. You'd probably not be very interested to know that I quite enjoy cooking. Now that I've told you that, though, I bet it's conjured up intriguing images in your mind of this correspondent embroiled in the throes of culinary endeavour. In fact, I reckon you've now stopped reading this column for a moment and are sitting there visualising me delicately placing succulent strips of pan-seared guinea fowl on top of a carefully constructed tower of char-grilled asparagus, before titivating the plate with skid marks of tarragon juice, kissing my pinched fingers and shouting "Che buono" as I serve up yet another gastronomic tour de force. Either that or you're just envisioning some gosh foodie Philistine glumly daunting the gloopy dregs of the ketchup bottle over a couple of slightly burnt Findus crispy pancakes. Yeah, I thought that would be the case. The reason for this cuisine-related waffle is that Rory McIlroy revealed his menu the other day for the Champions Dinner at the forthcoming Masters. Yes, it's that time of year again, folks, when all the sundry get positively giddy about some noise that's dished up to a few blokes in green jackets. By all hysterical accounts, it makes the Medici wedding banquet look like a few beef paste pieces wrapped in cling film. Given that the Augusta High-Hegians are masters in the art of dewy-eyed self-grandising, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a TV channel during tournament week dedicated entirely to the Champions Dinner, with the great Jim Nance delivering a cooing commentary of whispering reverence as Ben Crenshaw slaughters a grilled elk slider down his nicely pressed shirt. The elk sliders, by the way, are part of McIlroy's menu, along with things like peach and ricotta flatbread, rock shrimp tempura, bacon-wrapped dates, yellowfin tuna carpaccio, wagyu filet mignon, and seared salmon. It's just like the specials board in the Herald canteen. In this game, of course, there's always plenty of food for thought. John Rahm's obstinate, may say ridiculously egotistical standoff for the DP World Tour continues. Bryson DeChambeau beefed up his Masters momentum with a second win in a row on the LIV circuit, and Matt Fitzpatrick energised his own Augusta build-up with a redemptive win in the Valspar Championship. A week ago, the upwardly mobile Englishman was nursing his wounds after a painful last-gasp defeat in the Players' Championship. In the fickle pursuit of abundant ups and downs, twists and turns, and endless wheels of what if, what might have been, and what the hell was that? You just have to pick yourself up and get back in the saddle. The ability to rebound strongly from adversity is what maketh a golfing man or woman. Some of us weak-minded mortals, meanwhile, still dwell on a shattering shank from weeks ago and allow its startling effects to linger for an eternity in our doom-laden, tortured thought processes. Fitzpatrick's competitive fortitude glistened like some buffed-up Sheffield steel as he conjured a clinical finish in Florida. 7 days after bogeying the last at Sawgrass to lose, the 31-year-old Yorkshireman trundled into a fist-pumping birdie putt on the 18th to win the third PGA Tour title of his career and zoom back into the world's top 10. There was no hangover or woe in me reaction to his previous disappointment. Fitzpatrick, who didn't drop a single shot over the closing 36 holes at exhausting Innsbruck, showed the bounce-back ability, for want of a better word, that not all players can muster. The fact that the 2022 US Open champion produced such a performance while playing with a painfully slow Adrien de Montchasseur underlined his resolve. At times, de Montchasseur, who sounds more like one of the nice red wines in Rory's Champions Dinner menu, inched along with about as much surging impetus as an oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. On the 11th hole, the Belgian pluttered around for 3 minutes before hitting his shot, much to the chagrin of the brisk Fitzpatrick. Those of you watching the coverage probably get up off your seat and give the side of the TV a thump to see if that would get things moving. In the cut and thrust of a title race, the last thing anybody involved in the sharp end wants is to be twiddling their thumbs. Viewers, meanwhile, don't want the spectacle reduced to slow motion footage. Credit then to Fitzpatrick for keeping the head when it could have easily lost it. It was slow today, said Fitzpatrick, who approached the referee mid-round to complain at Dumont de Chassard's snail-like progress. I felt like there was a stop-start. When you're not ready to play a golf shot, it gets frustrating after a while, particularly when you're playing well yourself or you're in contention. Rather like a bothersome stone that's in your shoe, the pace of play issue in golf doesn't go away, does it? Yes, you can shake and sugar the metaphorical stone into a little nook of your footwear for a temporary reprieve, but pretty soon that annoyance will be back, more irritating than before. When it comes to slow play, we've always seemed to be going round in, well, very slow circles. Fitzpatrick at least has moved up a few gears, as the first men's major of the season looms on the horizon. Rather like Rory's menu, things are getting tasty. Pass me an elk slider, will you? That article was by Nick Roger.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and to tell your friends about our service.